The sea was black, not calm, not quiet, just black. Thousands of men sat in cramped landing crafts, rocking violently as waves slammed against thin metal walls. The engines roared, but no one spoke. Some prayed, some vomited, some stared into nothing. Because in just minutes, they would be running into hell, and many of them already knew something was wrong. This was supposed to be the beginning of the end of World War II. Instead, it almost became one of the greatest disasters in history. The plan was massive, unbelievable in scale. Over 150,000 Allied soldiers, thousands of ships, paratroopers dropping from the sky, bombers roaring overhead. One single day, one single mission, break into Nazi-occupied France. They called it D-Day, and if it failed, the war could drag on for years, maybe longer. But then, the weather turned. Storms battered the English Channel. Waves rose higher and higher. The original invasion date had to be delayed. Every hour increased the risk. Every delay gave the Germans more time. And that's when everything started to unravel. Because the invasion depended on perfect timing. Moonlight for paratroopers, low tide for clearing beach obstacles, calm seas for landing troops. Instead, they got chaos. The soldiers in the boats could barely hold their weapons steady. Many were already seasick before even reaching land. Some couldn't stand. And that's when everything changed. High above them, in the darkness, thousands of paratroopers were already dropping into France. But strong winds scattered them everywhere. Units meant to land together were split apart. Soldiers landed miles away from their targets. Some drowned in flooded fields. Others were dropped right into German positions. They were isolated, confused, surrounded, and they had no idea where they were. What they didn't realize, the plan was already falling apart. Back at sea, the landing crafts pushed forward. The beaches of Normandy were waiting. But so were the Germans. Machine guns, artillery, bunkers, and they had the high ground. The first wave approached Omaha Beach. The doors dropped, and instantly, chaos. Bullets tore through the air like rain. Men fell before they could even step into the water. The sea turned red within seconds. Some soldiers drowned under the weight of their gear. Others were cut down trying to reach the sand. There was no cover, nowhere to hide. And that's when panic started to spread. Entire units were wiped out in minutes. Officers were killed before giving a single order. Radios were destroyed. Communication collapsed. The plan was gone. What they didn't realize, they were dangerously close to failure. At Omaha Beach, things were worse than anyone imagined. The pre-invasion bombing had missed its targets. German defenses were still intact, fully operational, fully manned, fully ready. And now they were firing at men trapped in the open. Wave after wave of soldiers kept coming, and wave after wave was crushed. Bodies piled up in the water. Survivors crawled across sand soaked in blood, trying to find any kind of cover. Some hid behind obstacles. Some dug into the sand with their bare hands. Others simply froze. And then, something even worse happened. Commanders started to consider retreat. The unthinkable. If Omaha failed, the entire invasion could collapse. Thousands of men would die for nothing, and the Allies might never get another chance. But then, something unexpected began to happen. Small groups of soldiers started moving forward, not because they were ordered to, but because staying still meant death. They climbed cliffs, crawled through barbed wire, charged machine gun nests, not as coordinated units, but as desperate survivors. And that's when everything shifted. The Germans weren't expecting this kind of chaos. They were prepared for an organized assault, not scattered groups attacking from unexpected angles. Slowly, painfully, the Allied soldiers started breaking through, one bunker at a time, one position at a time. But the cost was horrific. Meanwhile, other beaches faced their own nightmares. At Utah Beach, strong currents pushed landing crafts off course. Troops landed in the wrong place. But strangely, this mistake saved lives. They landed in a less defended area, and what could have been another disaster became one of the smoother landings. But at the time, no one knew that. Everything felt like it was going wrong, everywhere. And that's when everything changed again. Naval ships moved closer to shore, closer than planned, dangerously close. They fired directly into German positions, blasting bunkers, silencing machine guns, creating openings where none existed before. It was risky, but it worked. On the beaches, soldiers saw something they hadn't seen all morning: hope. They pushed forward harder, through smoke, through fire, through fear, and slowly, the impossible started to become possible. By midday, small footholds had been established, fragile, bloody, but real. And that's when the tide began to turn. Reinforcements kept coming. More men, more equipment, more firepower. The Germans started to feel the pressure. But what they didn't realize, their own command was failing them. Confusion spread among German officers. Reports were unclear, communication was slow, and crucial decisions were delayed because one man wasn't available. Adolf Hitler. He was asleep when the invasion began, and no one dared wake him. So the German response was slower than it needed to be, and that delay changed everything. Back on the beaches, Allied forces kept pushing. Every meter gained was paid for in blood. Every bunker taken meant lives lost. But they were moving forward. And once that momentum started, it couldn't be stopped. By the end of the day, the beaches were secured. Barely. Thousands were dead. Thousands more wounded. The sand was still stained red. But the invasion had succeeded. Just barely. And that's the part most people never realize. D-Day wasn't a flawless victory. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't controlled. It was chaos. It was confusion. It was a near disaster. If just a few things had gone differently, if the Germans had reacted faster, if the naval ships hadn't moved closer, if those small groups of soldiers hadn't pushed forward, the outcome could have been completely different. The invasion could have failed. And World War II could have taken a very different path. More years of fighting, more destruction, more lives lost. But instead, against all odds, through mistakes, confusion, and sheer human determination, they held the line. They broke through, and they changed history. But it leaves one haunting question. What if they hadn't? What if D-Day really had become a complete disaster?